Hi, it's Steve Wiltshire. I have a question for you. Have you ever noticed that some of your greatest adversities and challenges ultimately provided you with the greatest growth in your life? Almost 15 years ago, I found myself waking up around 4 o'clock in the morning, a couple times a week. I can remember having this self-realization as I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, that I felt this extreme anxiety, and I wondered, why do I feel depressed? I don't really understand why I felt that way, because looking from the outside in 15 years ago, my life looked ideal. I thought I had everything I wanted. I had a fulfilling marriage. I had a beautiful custom-built home, a brand new beach home on the Oregon coast. My wife and I were expecting a new baby. We were really excited about that. I was earning every trip and every top award possible through my company. My income was beyond my wildest dreams. My health was ideal. I had several close friends. I had a great relationship with God, and I had this thought constantly, Steve, you should be so grateful for what you have. You have no reason to feel depressed. Your life is great. And I actually felt guilty for having these thoughts. Well, as time went by, I continued to really keep thinking these same thoughts, and it got worse. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to get up in the morning. I was scared. I was really scared. I had signs of fatigue and depression, and everything seemed to take a lot of energy. I was falling asleep at the wheel. Anytime I would meet someone to coach them for a party or interview them for the business, even meeting with a rep, I could feel like I was falling asleep during the conversation. Well, I finally went to the doctor thinking there was something physically wrong with me, and after several tests, my doctor diagnosed me as having depression. And I remember thinking, me? Depression? No way. What's the matter with me? Why do I feel this way? And so I made the decision to try to deal with it on my own. And I did that without medication, and it continued to get worse. And I began praying over and over and over for a miracle. Well, my miracle showed up in the form of an angel by the name of Holly Andre. And Holly was a part-time representative on my team and very successful in the high-tech world. And she lived in Portland, but she was traveling back and forth to Chicago, supporting her son through his transition from high school to college. Well, consequently, she hadn't attended a meeting for a while, and we hadn't really touched base for several months. And I got this call from her out of the blue. Before I share that with you, the worst part of this was faking it to everyone. And after a week's of misery, unannounced, this miraculous Tuesday morning that I'll never forget, Holly knocked at my door, and after being in her presence for an hour, I noticed all of these amazing changes she had made in her life, but most importantly, her way of being, her heightened consciousness. I wanted what she had. And I remember I looked at her and I said, how did you make all these changes? And she looked at me and she said, I hired a coach. And I said, what's a coach? Back then, I really didn't know what coaching was. It wasn't really that popular. And she began describing coaching. And I didn't really get it, but the proof was within her. And I followed through and I hired this coach. And after a few lessons, or a few sessions and lessons of coaching, it became apparent to me that I'd filled my life so full that I didn't have any room to breathe. And I know some of you are relating to me right now. I'd stuffed my life with activities and relationships and expectations of myself that I had become paralyzed by all the demands and all the expectations that I had put on myself. And as a result, I had this conditioned way of thinking. Well, through my experience of being coached, I realized that I had choices. So I chose to take responsibility for the life that I was living. And I began saying no to the beliefs, expectations, and the fears that had me by the throat. I became aware of people's agendas, where I was losing my power, what I really wanted, and I started acquiring the tools that serve my values. I began by eliminating the beliefs, the activities, and the relationships that no longer served me. I realized that I had made up all of these self-imposed expectations that weren't true, that I had to develop these new habits that were better for me instead of the habits that were making me feel miserable. And it was as if I was in this state of amnesia and I couldn't see my life clearly. I mean, I felt like my house and my automobile constantly had to be spotless. I had to exercise 5 days a week or I didn't feel good about myself. And if I wasn't top of my game, meaning placing on the company statistics nationally, I felt that I wasn't doing my job. And if I wasn't setting the example, who was I? If my income wasn't a certain amount, I'd drive myself insane until I reached it. And I had so many friends and acquaintances, and I was always reaching out, keeping the relationships alive. And ironically, looking back, many of them didn't really fuel me. But my belief was, I should keep in touch. These are friends. It's important to have friends. And anytime the word should comes out of your mouth, it actually is an indication that you're not living from a value. You're living from a belief that isn't really true for you. Well, I eventually realized many of my expectations revolved around comparing me to others. I was living a life based on I should, I have to, I need to, instead of I want to. The truth is, we create our own reality. And creating a life that you love requires that you learn to say no to the beliefs, activities, and relationships that no longer serve you. And you say yes to that of which brings you joy and passion. Because let's face it, the life you're living today is in direct proportion with the choices you made yesterday. And the life you'll live tomorrow is based on the choices you make today. So in theory, it appears quite simple. If you want something different than what you're experiencing, or you want a greater life than what you have, just begin to make new choices. But is it that easy? Not really. It takes guts, and only to the degree that you're willing to become aware of who you are, who you really are, what you really value, will you even remotely understand the choices that will bring you joy, peace, and happiness. Meaning, you must know yourself in order to make decisions that transforms how you think. And when you change your thinking, you're going to attract the life that you want to live. Well, time management in its essence is simply about making choices that support your rendition of a quality life. And I really believe that half the choices we make must bring us passion. And the other half, we must bring passion to them. Choices that involve responsibilities or relationships. So, I want to challenge you to make 3 choices this week that bring you immense vitality. Will you? I want to hear from you. I want to invite you to take this on not only this week, for the next 4 weeks, and then I want you to visit my Facebook business page, Steve Wiltshire, Lifeline Coaching and Education, and share your greatest takeaways from my message today. I'm honored to be on this path with you. Have a beautiful week. Love and success.